Welcome, everybody. My name is Andy Hayhurst. I'm the UK country manager for ELEKS. Welcome to our online discussion on why digital is key for logistics survival in a crisis. A couple of bits of housekeeping for everybody. Can I ask you all to remain muted, please? Questions will be at the end of the presentations. So if you do have any as they progress, can you put them into the chat, please? And then we'll come to you at that point after the presentations. So moving on, we have 3 speakers this evening. And the first will be Anatoliy Lytovchenko, our Deputy CTO from ELEKS, followed by Dr. Joseph Hyde, the founder and CEO of Pick and Ship, and that will be followed by Vitaly Yuriev, our other Deputy CTO, who you can see pictured in front of you just now. So I'll move on to the agenda. Okay, so my brief introduction, and then we'll go straight into Anatoliy's presentation. We're hoping that they'll all follow on pretty quickly, one after the other, and then the question and answer session will follow at 6 p.m. So, Anatoliy, are you ready to proceed?
Yes, I'm ready, Andy. My name is Anatoliy Lytovchenko. I'm CTO Deputy at ELEKS. And actually today's conversation, today's 3 conversation will be all about the logistics, and mine is not exception. Logistics and transportation, one of the main business domains we picked in the past years, and that's obviously because we did lots of cool stuff, hard stuff in there, and we had many customers who worked with logistics and transportation. We were not afraid to solve really complex technological issues, and hopefully I can share some of those IT ideas and show our expertise, what we did in the past. Today's conversation is about how to boost capacity, and that's not about the trucks, how you bring more trucks or vehicles or drivers in that. That's mostly IT related. How IT can help in the current situation to boost logistics and transportation in all kinds of businesses, whether you're retail or logistics itself, or maybe you are some of the IT companies who do the same. Let me actually start first with the situation. I will not explain what the coronavirus and what the pandemic situation is. You all know about that, you heard about that. We actually switched to work from home mode quite early, the same as probably you are. For IT company, it's obvious and relatively easy. And when I switched to work from home mode, I accidentally realized that I'm missing some of the capacity of my Wi-Fi internet at home. And that was just because my family started stealing my Wi-Fi and my internet. When we all appeared at the same flat for a longer period of time, I counted about 10 devices connected to the internet. All of them were streaming some video content, video conferences, games, and so on. You probably experienced it the same. And for the first week, I realized that I need to do something with that situation, because I barely can do my job in there. I barely can talk and communicate via video conferences. I actually replaced my Wi-Fi home router, and I'm running a mesh network right now. I increased my internet monthly plan, and I did some tweaks with the DNS servers. So all those 3 quick fixes, and I think I spent about an hour on each of them, increased about 3 times more my capability and my capacity of the internet and home Wi-Fi. And that actually brought me to a logical question: can, within the current situation, which is probably not forever, but for some time, can we do some kind of quick fixes or tips which will help businesses to do the same, to get the real benefits right away, and to boost the capacity? I And first, what came into my mind is, of course, the logistics and transportation. That's actually a screenshot of the one online grocery store which I tried to order and deliver to my flat. And you see that it's in Ukrainian actually, but you see that everything is in drag, is occupied. So I couldn't deliver anything for 3 days up front. All those time slots were occupied. That actually followed by the counterpoint research, who tried to research impact on the IT infrastructures on the different businesses of the pandemic situation. And you clearly see that there are some of the businesses who impacted as a big increase in demand and who impacted as a big decrease in demand. And one of the biggest now is actually retail online. And that's probably not because people started eating more, right? But maybe slightly, but not so. Or they started consuming more stuff at home. It's just probably because they started buying stuff online more instead of the physical stores, and they now delivering, and they want to deliver everything to their homes. And that actually puts a big pressure on the logistics of those retails or logistic companies. And I thought, is there anything for that business where IT can do a quick actions and have drastical changes and increase in the situation? We realized that those demands in the logistics and retail domains are actually not a bad. It's more a good. It's like a good challenge. You experience more demand, so it's obviously can bring you more revenue and you can fulfill more orders. Let's switch to the IT stuff of that, because currently all the businesses, they are based on some of the infrastructure, IT infrastructure. You barely can find any business without IT nowadays. I will quickly go through the 5 of the possible solutions. Maybe some of them you are familiar with. Maybe some of them can be new for you. Those all 5 can be tried right away, quickly, and you can experience some quick gains out of them. First one is CDN, which is Content Delivery Network. So if you are hosting some online resources, if you're having an online store, or maybe you have some web pages where you have different content, images, videos, forms for delivery ordering, as soon as the demand of your service is increased, you see that should increase actually a lot on your web resources. And as you probably remember, for the past days when Google made a research when people, well, actually web resource or web pages loads time more than 3 seconds, that people tend to switch to other resources. So if your website is actually slowing down, then people probably will switch to other provider. And that's where CDN is helpful. You can try to move your heavy resources out of your website and put that in the network of edge servers, so that network can deliver content much faster than your server, even if you're in a cloud, for example. At the bottom, you actually see a comparison of 5 top CDN providers in the world. And you see that those also have fluctuations, but there is a clear, that's a performance, by the way. As lower the graph is, better they are. Performance in the pink. So you see that there is a clear winner in there. Currently it's a Google, but that's for 10 days period of time. That's also helpful. CDN is also helpful in case you have some operational activities and all your employees moved from actually switched to work from home mode, meaning that you also can move some of the resources which are oftenly used by them, but rarely changed. So they can consume that faster, and they can work with maybe the data or the tools in the web quicker. The second solution, so we gradually move in the more complex solutions. The second solution is integrations. Of course, if you are a retail store, for example, and you experience more orders from day to day, and you have to fulfill them, you probably are searching for ways to integrate with other businesses, like in this image, parcel delivery boxes. I actually read research that Germany states that they have 90% of the population covered with parcel delivery stations within 10 minutes walk. So it's obvious for a Germany business to integrate with those parcel delivery stations and deliver their orders in those stations, so people can walk in and grab their stuff. So a single driver, single delivery person can deliver multiple boxes at the same time instead of going through the blocks and serving people one by one. But to be able to do that, actually you need to integrate your IT infrastructure with IT infrastructure of this parcel station. If you want, for example, to track the delivery of your order, or you want to notify people that their orders are in those boxes so they can go and grab that. There are few possible ways from the IT perspective how to integrate. Of course, there is a direct integration with API. Nowadays, most of those boxes have APIs. More advanced is actually a message queuing when you are sure that your message is delivered. And most advanced is a kind of integration service buses where you can control multiple integrations and put some business logic on top of that. If we're talking about integrations, we actually currently live in a global world. We live in the ecosystem, and there is no single business who stays in silos. You still integrate with businesses nearby, and especially if you are retail or logistic domain, you're embedded in some supply chain. So you are part of the supply chain to your customers. And for that, for a growing business in such a global world, you're actually one of those businesses who others are willing to integrate with. And for that, your IT infrastructures probably have APIs. And if you have APIs, you probably want to have API manager. If you have increasing demand of your API services, you somehow have to monitor that, you have to detect that, you have to maybe measure, and you have to secure connections. At least how Google, for example, does. If you ever tried Google services and you wanted to geolocate some of the addresses on the map, Google actually has some threshold. For a free trial, you can do it probably 100 or 1,000 times per day. And they did it intentionally, so everybody cannot put a big pressure on their computational resources. You probably want to do the same, so you want to have some visibility of what's going on with your APIs. Also, if you look at the more convenient interfaces for your customers or the businesses who integrate with you, especially chatbots, nowadays they are quite popular. You again have to have API. Imagine if you're a taxi company, a logistics company who has a fleet of taxi vehicles and drivers, and you have some spare capacity. So you want to propose that spare capacity for some retail online shops. You can create easy to develop a chatbot where those sites or their support services, their managers can call your chat, or actually can write to your chat whether you can deliver that package from this address to this address within maybe 2 hours. And if that is actually connected to your vehicles, that can be automatically served and you can get a reply back, again, automatically, but for that you need API manager too. Solution number 4 is a cloud. Well, it's not a secret that modern business is moving towards the cloud. If you haven't started that yet, that's probably a time to start, because otherwise it will be hard for you to get a competitive advantage. And to move all your stuff into the cloud is a long journey. If you want to transform and re-engineer that takes a lot of time. But what you can do right now, and what you can get benefits of right now, is, for example, move some of your operational or office stuff. Google or Microsoft, they propose nice options for Office programs. They propose nice options for online collaboration. And if you haven't used that for a small business that's about to do that. Also, from the simplest, what you can do and what you can move in the clouds within a week, for example, is some kind of data. If you want to get insights of your data, what you have, just move it in the cloud and try to create some reports out of that. That's a relatively easy task to execute, and you may be surprised what kind of insights and information you will get out of your data. And third, you may want to maybe pre-process some of your data. For example, if you have a big amount of orders which you're going to fulfill tomorrow, it's better today maybe to upload that in the cloud and remove duplications and check against the warehouse how many more stuff you need to order. Maybe check the addresses of that delivery packages and plan some routings. And that, again, can be easily done with clouds in their services. Because nowadays, modern clouds, they have lots of, actually tons of different services which are helpful for business. It's not only virtual machines anymore. They literally have 300 or 400 of different services. Some of them are really helpful for logistics. And finally, solution number 5, Lambdas, or serverless architecture. That's a really hot topic from the IT perspective. So all IT people is now trying to create that serverless architecture and trying to find the ways how to use that. You don't need to go so deep in the technical details. You just need to realize that serverless is actually what cloud providers want to give for a business, hiding all the complexity of operations, performance, scalability, maintainability, and those virtual machines under the hood. So they are given a pure interface where you can work with a business logic and don't care about performance issues or don't care about scalability issues. Lambdas are hard if you want to implement them ubiquity all over your business or do some complex stuff in there. But you can easily, or I would say relatively easily, start with some functionality which you can move in the cloud right away. For example, if you have, again, increased demand of orders, and you probably want to split those orders in 3 buckets, where first bucket is orders where you can fulfill 100% of items in there. Second bucket is where you can fulfill 70% of items in there. And third bucket is where you can fulfill maybe 50% or less, or 70% and less than 70%. For first bucket, you want to pass those orders directly to your operational people, right? So they can pack your orders in. For second bucket is what you actually, your support service and call service want to check with your customers. Maybe they will want to replace something so we can fulfill order right away. And for third bucket, when you have less than 70%, you actually want to notify customers that their stuff will be available tomorrow. And for that, that's actually a nice case for Lambda function, because you can create a function which will automatically read all those orders. It will check against the warehouse. And in first case, if it's a first bucket, order will be sent automatically to the fulfillment center. Second bucket will be sent automatically to a call center. In third bucket, you can send automatic emails to customers and maybe postpone order for tomorrow. I remember I was visiting one of the serverless conferences, and there was a guy talking about Lambdas, and the audience asked him how much actually money he spends on his data science solution, monthly data science bill. And he was actually analyzing car plate number automatically. And he said, only $20. People were surprised by that and asked why. Just because I'm using Lambdas. I'm actually created a simple function which calls a simple cloud service for image recognition. And as a return, I get a pure number out of the image. So probably you can do the same if you're, for example, logistics company and you have vehicles, you have trucks, and you want automatically track what truck is in the park or left the park and what truck has actually arrived to the park. With just a simple camera and photo of those images as soon as they cross some border, for example. That's relatively easy to execute with Lambda functions. Also a big plus, then you actually pay for execution. So as soon as you have 50 orders, you have 50 function calls, you pay 50 times for a function call. And actually a single function call is just a tiny fraction of cent to be paid. As you have more and more, for example, 1 million executions, you pay for 1 million calls of that Lambda functions. And you don't care about performance or scalability. Well, actually, overall, that's it. We reviewed 5 of the possible IT solutions. Those are not complex ones, believe me. Those are not like blockchain where you need to invest years, or those are not ERP systems where you spend, again, years to and fight with change management. Those are relatively easy implemented stuff within maybe a week or two. And from my experience, those items can actually give you business value right away. Thank you for your attention. I will be glad to answer all your questions after the sessions. So we have 2 more sessions. You can always write your questions in chat, and we'll have Q&A session at the end. Again, thank you very much. And I'm passing my words to Dr. Joseph Hyde, who will tell you more about the future of e-commerce fulfillment. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you also for the invitation for everyone to join. You see some sunlight coming through here. That's disturbing my picture a little bit, but that's actually good to have in the current situation. I'm happy to talk about Pick and Ship. To briefly introduce it, I'm founder and CEO, and Pick and Ship is en route to basically change the way of parcel logistics. And today I would like to share a bit the vision we have. So give a broad overview of what we want to achieve and what problem we want to solve, and show you a little, or explain a little video to you to give you a bit of insight. So it's a very short presentation, so I'll try to kind of find a way through. You'll also receive a presentation which has some more text, so you can also read some more details. And if you have questions, feel free to ask or reach out. So I'll try to share my screen now so that I can lead you to a couple of charts. Yes. So just as a brief introduction, I wanted to touch base a little bit on an outlook of what on COVID-19 and the impact it has on us as a startup, but also on the industry, logistics, especially in the area of e-commerce logistics. So first of all, of course, it's a major impact on health and well-being of many people. So let's stand together on this. But if we look on the commercial side, so I think there is a fast forward to be expected for e-commerce and digitization. If it's plus 3 years, we'll see, because there is a lot of new customers who now experience e-commerce and the convenience of e-commerce. So there's significant growth, and Anatoliy already showed the numbers before. In Switzerland, it is sometimes more than 20% currently. And especially, I think we should not forget that for many companies who have locked down or closed their shops right now, they will probably close quite a number of shops, and basically they will have to go online much more to be as an insurance for the next event that could happen. There's also a change on supply chains and distributions that we expect. Of course, there will be probably some more diversification of suppliers and storage, But also we see that for fulfillment and delivery, there is a move closer to customers. So when Amazon last summer started to announce the next day deliveries, we saw quite some changes, that the central warehouses were not the main fashion anymore, but that people try to get closer to consumption centers to be faster at customers. And unfortunately, there will also be quite some restructuring, cost cutting in many companies, also in retail, bricks and mortar especially, but in many industries, which will be a big challenge going forward. There will be kind of time to realign to a new normal. There will high speed of change and also kind of selective investments we expect. So we also had to kind of change our portfolio of solutions that we focus on in the current situation. I'll come to that later briefly. So what's the problem we want to solve? The observation we have is actually, if we look at customers, so end users, but also if you think of a customer, for example, a retail store that you deliver to, or even a company, an office, a large company or large office complex that you deliver to, it's actually quite a cumbersome process to receive shipments, because it's not big volumes, it's not bulk anymore. It's small parcels, it's a lot of packaging, it's a lot of handling. And manual work. Receptions are stuffed. Here at my home, I have 4 ladies at home. I spend probably 50 to 100 hours a year just on folding and disposing cardboard and e-commerce returns. So it's a lot of wasted time. If you look at retailers, for them it's a similar burden, because it's very handling intensive, all the work they do in a fulfillment center, and also in their stores when they receive goods. They have really high logistics costs. So, you know, Zalando or Amazon, they run 20 to 30% of their sales is logistics costs. And that often is more than 2/3 of their margin. And they need to massively invest in logistics networks, which, you know, especially in the current crisis again, think of Zalando, they built, you know, big fulfillment centers in Poland. I'm not sure they would be as happy with them, you know, in the current time, because they probably would have liked to do it more closer to consumption centers. So for them, it's a big burden. Logistics and parcel service, it's the same. They struggle with the volume growth. Their network advantage is kind of eroding, because big e-commerce retailers go direct more and more to the consumption centers with own trucks, and they try to find, you know, their own delivery partners, like Amazon did. And they're obviously squeezed by high volume of the big customers. And for the environment, it's obviously a big burden too, because, you know, cardboard, even if you recycle, it needs a lot of energy, has a quite big CO2 footprint. And as a customer, many things you receive, you actually don't want to receive, because it's just a pain in the neck. Plastic is even worse, of course. Those are things that under COVID-19, we are not sure if, you know, the perspective on the environmental burden will change, but I'm absolutely sure it will remain, and probably will also be a fast forward to find solutions there. So there's a lot of, you know, problems actually around the logistics. Overall, it's kind of an inconvenient, inefficient, largely inefficient process, and a lot of waste. And with pick and ship, we actually took a different approach. So we said, you know, if the pallet was great when you ship a lot of volume, right, of similar products, maybe today, if you have kind of small volume, small packages, packing them on a pallet or on a cage, trolley, is probably not the most efficient way of doing it. So we thought, well, what if we kind of give every shipment a box that has support rails, and we can flexibly store it in a trolley that has support rails? Maybe that would be interesting. And I'll show you in a movie later on. So the simple idea is not to put things into a disposable cardboard box whenever possible, but to put it in a transport box that is multi-use. Second, that box has support rails and is not stacked on top of each other, so that you always have to stack and unstack for sorting, for example, but that you put it on a specific place in the trolley, and you can take each individual shipment out anytime. And that is interesting, obviously, for filling, you know, for example, picked orders. But especially it's interesting for sorting and delivery, because you don't always have to resort the whole trolley. You can just pick out individual shipments, and you know exactly where they are, which, by the way, is an interesting challenge from IT-wise. So let me briefly jump to the and obviously, if you start using boxes in trolleys that are not stacked, but basically have individual positions that you can take out, the whole process changes. So you don't need big sorting machines, but you actually can sort directly from trolley to trolley. In transportation, you know, it's similar like roll cages or pallets. You just drive the whole fine sorted trolleys into trucks. And for the delivery, you're extremely flexible if you want to put it on an electric bike, or if you want to put it in a sprinter, or if you want to do it with a bigger truck. And at the end, you also have an interesting solution, obviously, for parcel kind of parcel box solutions, because you don't need specific boxes anymore. You just use the trolleys and the transport boxes that you already have. So the whole system actually can change. You can also use only parts of the system, but that's the colored 8 is actually the vision that we want to have a circular process that actually starts with a shipment, but always comes back. So a more circular approach that is more efficient and reduces waste. I'd like to briefly show you a video that's also available on our website or on my LinkedIn profile. And we just look now at the process from a fulfillment center with traditional delivery of goods to the picking station and to the sorting process. So here we see a traditional system basically bringing tomato sauce that someone has ordered. The pick by light indicates the box where we should place it into. Someone ordered pasta, so the shipment, the yellow one is now picked, right? And packed, it's the same process. Now the next client, he ordered some t-shirts and the jeans. So here we have a goods to man system where actually the goods to pick are already and for storage are already in a pick and ship trolley in these boxes. And so you see they are basically brought to the picker. The next order, the book and the headphone. And so this is basically now a trolley with picked orders. And now comes the sorting process. And this is relatively simple, that we have the picked orders and we drive along destination trolleys. So this could go to Zurich, or this could go to Frankfurt, or to the Ukraine, right? And so we just pick out the shipments that need to go to that zone 2 and throw it in the trolley. And then we move on to the other trolleys. And if that trolley is full for zone 2, you just move the entire trolley into the transport vehicle. In that case, it's basically a delivery truck. And you see that we plan to have a system, that's a third patent we applied for a system to basically move the trolleys inside of a truck that would enable us that if we arrive upon destination that we don't have to search in the truck, but actually pick by light again, we have the shipments for the next deliveries at hand. And at delivery, there's another feature that obviously the person here could either take the whole box. In that case, she decides just to take her orders and she has a return shipment and she can directly book that into the multi-use box, because it obviously is a smart box and the IT can basically handle the return shipment in the same box. If someone's not at home, there could be features where you kind of lock the box to the home. But I think more is the so-called multi-drop solutions that we have here, where office buildings or bigger companies or parcel shops, basically the entire fine sorted trolleys are delivered. There's no searching in the truck again. And the returns or empty boxes from the day before or from the morning are basically taken back to the sorting centers and go basically in the circular way back home. So what you see is, look at this. I'm trying to show this with this chart. So in the early days of the company, we basically worked on how does a product from a producer actually reach my home. The last mile, but it could also be a retail store or a customer of yours, right? And it's incredible. The handling steps that we have for a product to arrive to our homes is unbelievable. So this is actually a good case in e-commerce. You have probably more than 40 handling steps. If you have distributors or import-export partners involved, it could be 100, 120 steps. And that costs all a lot of money and a lot of manual handling. And obviously, of course, you can automate, but it's really, really expensive. And that's what we see with companies like Zalando having invested 1.2, 1.4 billion in the meantime, just in warehouse equipment, not in the buildings. That's another, a billion to 1.5 billion. So there's really big money needed, and it takes quite long to build the capacity. So the traditional process is really very fragmented, a lot of handling, and the main reason is the cardboard, right? Because it's just not great for handling if you need to unload, offload, and repack things. The pick and ship process, if you compare it, reduces those handling steps by over 60%. So we go down because loading and loading and unloading is actually replaced because you just directly sort out of the trolleys. And obviously the whole process is largely automated. And also the whole IT process is actually very much integrated and very much simplified because there's not so many parties and different entities involved. So there we also see great savings that we can achieve. So that's just the comparison basically from a traditional process with cardboard boxes and stacking on roll cages or on pallets, and pick and ship, and the pick and ship process where we basically use the pick and ship trolleys and the boxes inside. Now, we did a lot of work in looking into the different industries, kind of where could this apply. So we started in fashion and beauty. We looked at sports shoes and apparel, which is actually one of the most interesting cases because we can handle shoes actually from the factory, fully automated with little equipment, without any cardboard boxes if needed. Food and grocery, so those were also two early focus industries we looked at. I think that food and groceries probably is coming more into the focus now because of COVID-19 and the need for a lot of capacity on that front. Home and living is possible. They also have a lot of small parcels and not a big focus right now. Healthcare is a pilot we actually had planned to start the next month, but I fear that we'll probably lose there 2 or 3 months because they just have very different issues at the moment. Interestingly enough, we have hospitals in Switzerland that actually have to send workers, people home on the paid unemployment leave because all normal treatments had been moved back for COVID-19 intensive care patients. So it's interesting. So we have this problem on the healthcare side, but we still have unemployment there suddenly. And city logistics, there's kind of a lot of interesting applications we're working on. And basically, I mentioned before it looks like a very complex thing, but actually it is not, because we're using a similar thing. Just instead of a cardboard box, we use kind of a multi-use box, and instead of stacking it on top of each other, we move it on the support rails flexibly into the trolley. So we use a similar way basically of transporting, but much more simplified with much less handling, and we need a lot less of equipment. And I would say it's also a bit more smart, but obviously not as easy to implement. But we could, for example, start for a food retailer to do in-store picking directly into our trolleys, sort it if needed, and put it on an e-bike and bring it home directly. So this is a fast application that is basically like a closed circuit. The same is for material handling for hospitals. The case we looked at, it's basically to have these refill trolleys fine sorted according to need, and not just bringing kind of the next box that might need a year to be used. So there's a lot of interesting stuff we can do also for a fulfillment center. Or there's interesting stuff I mentioned for the shoes, for example. You can bring in shoes without bulk break and actually just store the complete sorted trolleys without putting them individually into other boxes and move them into, or you can actually just move in the trolleys and directly pick from there. So there's a lot of interesting stuff we can do. So last year in June, July, we kind of had the first presentations and went kind of out the first time with the pick and ship concept. And so we were at quite some conferences in Germany, the K5, and in Amsterdam, the Parcel and Post Expo the NOAA in London and in Athens, the NE33. And since then, we're basically preparing our pilots and really working on getting the hardware right and getting the software first steps done. So that was a quick run through. I hope it was somehow clear. So I'm open for questions also later on.
Yeah, thank you, Joseph. Yeah, people, you actually can post your questions in the chat box. And thank you very much for this presentation. I'm personally waiting for a world where the robots will actually do the fulfillment and order shipping. Because today finally I ordered some food to deliver to my home. Everything was done manually. And you know what? I get only 2/3 of my order. So I have to order again. I imagine how challenging it was for them. So thank you very much once more. And our third speaker, Vitaly Yuriev, will tell us more about challenges and how to maybe overcome those challenges nowadays.
So then again, let's start, and actually let's continue, because Anatoliy and Joseph already gave you a really cool talks about what are the challenges right now for the logistic companies, what are the potential solutions, how they can leverage the IT and the big data, the cloud solution, etc., just to move quickly and move forward like in the future and defeating this like a COVID situation, and not only the COVID. And today I want to talk about the topic that bothers actually every logistic company and the retailer. So, and this is the last mile delivery, right? And that's actually, it's really challenging to talk about the challenges and solution in this 15 minutes, but I'll do my best to give you the guidance and how you can move forward with all of that. And for those who didn't hear this term before, so this is the last step in the process of the product delivery. Or in other words, this is like it's the parcel journey from the warehouse to the end customer. If you ask logistic companies a question, what is the most important and complicated process in the company? So probably 7 out of 10 will answer the last mile delivery. And with no surprise, our customers like DPD and RMX, which are like a big logistic companies, so falls into the same category. So they also have a lot of challenges with the last mile deliveries, but they like efficiently handle this. But let's take a look why it's so important. And if you ever track your package online and so that is like out for delivery for what looks like forever, so you already understand that the last mile delivery is like a really inefficient process. So let's see what customers want nowadays, right? The customer expectations of online delivery options are rising unstoppably. And if you ask me about my shipping preferences, I would say that I want all of my items delivered immediately, right? Or even better, I want all of my items delivered yesterday, but not only yesterday, but say yesterday, 10 minutes before the start of my favorite TV show. So imagine, and yes, I want it for free. So imagine I just ordered some pizza and I really want it like right before my show. I want it hot. So that's actually what the customer wants. And if you take a look on this survey, so you'll see that the most customers will agree with me and look similar, right? So they're like not willing to pay too much for the next day delivery. Well, they agree to pay, let's say like $5, $10 for that. But most of them, they're like looking for the free deliveries, very quick deliveries, because they have a lot of different options where they can deliver the item, or where they can order, sorry, the item. So what is the result? So actually it leads us to, well, increasing cost of level, growing service requirements, and greater supply chain complexity, which is like already complex. Since logistics is like a very competitive market with a low margins, so companies are continuously looking for a way how to be more efficient. So take a look on this survey about top challenges facing the logistic companies. And if you take a look on at the top 3 of them, so you will see like the cutting transportation cost, business process improvement, improved customer services. So you will notice that they all are related to the problems, somehow related to the problems of the last mile delivery. So why it's actually important, why the last mile delivery is important. And there's like one of the reasons for that that's very simple. So if you take a look on this chart, you will see that around 53% of the delivery costs a last mile delivery cost. So think about that for 1 second. Half of the cost just to move the parcel from the warehouse to your door, which is like on average not more than like 3-4 miles, right? In Ukraine, it's even less, maybe 2 kilometers or 3 kilometers. So to answer the question, why it's so expensive, let's see what are the typical challenges of the last mile delivery actually. As you can see, so the top one is like addresses issue and package allocation. So they're like the most complicated challenges, and the most often cases are like it's hard to find the location, or the address is inaccurate or invalid. And that's actually different from the country to country. So before I started working with the RMX, I saw that the addressing system in the Ukraine is horrible. But later I discovered that in the Middle East, it even worse. So they're like no proper addressing system. So the people are like, so the Google Maps is actually, it's not very accurate. It's not very useful there. And the RMX, like in other companies, so they rely on other data provider, right? So which has a better addressing system and better data for that. Another issue, especially on the Middle East, of course, that people often write, let's say, next, so deliver this item like next left turn after the gas station, or right across this big yellow building. So that's actually the real delivery address from the data, right? So sometimes they use like the numbering, but in most of the cases they use something like completely different. Another challenge is like that the roads are changed dynamically. So that might be because of the traffic jams, and some of the traffic jams you can predict with Google Maps or other provider, but some of them like it just happens because of the car incident or the road construction. Other dynamic changes in the roads, or like might be that the new personnel, the new couriers who don't know that region very well, who were like recently just assigned to that region, so they like might use not the proper routes. So all that lead us to unpredictability in the transit, right? And that one more challenge, that's availability of the customer. And that's actually one of the big problems in Saudi Arabia, where women are not allowed to open the doors to the stranger. So basically, if they're, let's say, sitting at home, and actually, so most of the time they're sitting at home and delivering something and ordering something on Amazon or like other online services, right? So they order the door-to-door delivery, but when they are like only at home with their like children, so they're asking their children to open the door, sign the package, and talk to the courier, because they're not allowed to do that by themselves. But nowadays, like even today, it's much easier in the Europe, in the US, like everywhere, because of the COVID situation. So as everyone's sitting right now at home, right? So the customer availability is not a huge problem at this certain point of time. If you look at the situation today, so at the present time during the coronavirus situation, all of these challenges are becoming more critical. Well, except of one, the customer availability, as I mentioned previously. So even the most sophisticated and efficient companies like Amazon, they cannot handle all of this. They cannot handle the situation as well. So as you can see, they like won't deliver your shipments. Some of them will deliver, some of them with the delays. And not saying about the retailers and grocery stores that temporarily closed their physical stores, went online and introduced home delivery options. So they also have like challenges how to fulfill all of this demand. And imagine how many couriers will be hired to fulfill all of that demand that is happening right now. So according to the like latest news, like only Amazon is going to hire 100,000 new people just to handle that situation and still meet the SLAs. So imagine like 100,000 people globally. And those people are the people who don't know the company, right? The people who don't know the processes and tools. Moreover, those are the 100,000 rookies who don't know the region well, so they don't know the town, right? So imagine how hard it will be for them to find your apartment. And same currently happening in other industries as well. And recently, I took an Uber, and that the driver was completely new, because like he decided he was like, I decided to have some like extra salaries, right? And decided to take a drive. And actually, he didn't know the town. So basically, he not only took the not optimal route, which was suggested by Google, but also he was fined by police because he made a wrong turn. So that's actually the challenges that you have when you're hiring new people. So how to make the last mile delivery more efficient, right? Well, honestly, there is like no easy answer for that. And each company do this in a different ways using multiple methods and approaches. But most of them or all of them has something in common. So I will start like probably from the first step is like collect and clean the data. So that's first step. Might sounds too obvious, but I would like to emphasize how critical is that not only for logistic companies, but for any other industry. And if you think that it's like very easy to do, I would like to refer to the UPS project called Orion. Probably you heard about that, but if not, so Orion, that the project stands for the on-road integrated optimization and navigation. So that the project that cost UPS around 250 millions, but by December like 2015, that the outcomes of that project, the company already saved like 320 millions for that. So if you want to you can Google for that project and take a look on more details what they done. But basically they spent really a lot of efforts just to collect the data from the telemetry, from their cars, about their couriers, in order to identify the optimal ways how to move the van across the cities. And basically one of the discoveries was they identified that it's always, well, in most of the cases, it's better to take the right turn, like a right, and right, instead of waiting for on the traffic lights for the left turn. So, and probably nowadays, some of the couriers are still using that. In my life, so many customers contact ELEKS and ask to help them with the analytical project, but all of them started from the data collection and cleaning. Why I'm saying cleaning? Because it's like in reality, data you get really contains errors and it's really noisy. So you will need to dedicate efforts in order to clean it for later usage. And as an example, when we were building actually the data lake for the RMX, in the data, I found like several kind of anomalies, and one of the anomalies was that several parcels were flying back and forth between Hong Kong and Dubai. And I showed the data to the product owner, and actually we found that was like a really simple mistake in the data. But he also said that if that was the real behavior, so we would be out of the business very soon, because if we just simply delivering the packages back and forth several times. So again, really pay a lot of attention how you collect your data, what data you collect, and how you clean it, because like that's really, really important. Another case is about like to track inventory in your couriers, right? So it's still related to the data collection, is that you need to track all of these couriers on each phase. What route they took, how many stops they made, what parcels they delivered, where they have been at a certain time, where they parked their car, how many items how many times they were coming back and forth to the van, how much time they took to deliver the certain types of packages to certain locations. And same actually with the inventory. So track them not only in the warehouse, but on all the way to the customer. So why it's important? Remember about those like 100,000 rookies who don't know who will be like hired very soon and who don't know the region. And they also don't know the tips and tricks how to deliver packages in more efficient way, right? So they will for sure need some guidance from the experts and the top performance, how to do this, how to do that, where to park the car, so how to do this more efficient. So of course the companies have the training session, but if you can collect the data above your top performance, identify their behavior and use this for the teaching young generation. So that will be like a really beneficial and like save you a lot of money and increase your SLA with your end customers. And that's actually was one of the projects that we did with the like DNP in scope of the last mile delivery optimization. So again, look at your couriers, look at how they do this, when they do this, how much time they spend at each time. So at least track this and then look for the ways maybe you will identify what are the top complicated regions, what are the lower performance. So most of the couriers by themselves, especially those who are doing the delivery for 10 years, so they know their region very well. But what happens if they like that courier have the cyclic, sorry. So right, so you need to substitute this with someone who is like not so professional. So in that case, you may have some troubles. The second one, not the second one, the next one, that's about the analyze the patterns and optimize the routes. Well, you can optimize the your courier routes taking into account multiple static and dynamic attributes, right? Like each morning you have the list of most of your deliveries and the pickup location for the day. You assign them for each courier, etc., etc. There are also like a lot of tools available on the market that can help you to make better routing, taking into account the van capacity, fuel efficiency, etc., etc., etc. So several years ago, we were working on the project how you can automatically assign new pickup and delivery location to the proper courier. So it's like kind of Uber-based approach for the pickups, right? And that was like in the real time and taking into account like multiple criteria, like how busy is the current courier is. So how many packages he has to deliver during the day, how far is away from the pickup location, if the capacity of his van is like can handle this, etc., etc. And there was like also multiple optimizations criteria, so less impact on the schedule or less distance to travel, and of course others. So again, let's use your previously collected data to make the improved routes, right? Because if you don't have this GPS data, you cannot do this. And again, it's not the one-time exercise, it's rather part of your routine process, because if you do it only once, right, in some time, some routes are changed, some new routes are constructed. So you need to do this in the iterative way. Do this, do this, do this, and repeat. And I would say another suggestion how to make last mile more efficient is to know habits of your consignees or of your customers. So we all are different and have different expectations and preferences about the delivery, right? And if you analyze historical data about each consignee, you will be able to make prediction about what is the best time slot for delivery. Will they prefer cash on delivery or the other payment method? And actually why I mentioned the cash on delivery, because that's actually still a problem on the Middle East, because especially again in Saudi Arabia, because the people get used to the cash on delivery options when they receive the item and then they pay a cash. So they don't use the credit card or prepayment. And there is like one issue with that. So a lot of customers, let's say they ordered the iPhone, but they don't really like the color of that iPhone. So they say, well, I don't really want to pay for that one. I don't like the color, so take it back. I didn't pay anything in advance, so there is like no cost associated with that for the customer. But there is like a huge cost for the logistic company. And they're also looking for the ways how to make this process more efficient and how to optimize it. So probably one of the ideas you can make the rating of your consignees, like understand their behaviors better. And maybe for some of them provide cash on delivery, for someone like to provide some other payment methods. Of course, that's also good to understand what shipping address to use in case the consignees didn't specify it correctly. So based on all of that information about the habits of your consignees, you can also plan courier routes in a more optimal way. So that's like all of those suggestions is like one suggestion to do this one or third one or first one or second one. So try to think about this as a complex process, and again, start from the data collection. And again, so that was like Know Your Customers was the set of project that we've done with the Aramex. So we really paid a lot of attention to learn the customer behavior in order to make a better prediction for a delivery address and for the preferred time slot. And actually, like as a bonus, so there's like maybe you heard about that, maybe not, but like in 2014, Amazon has filed a patent for shipping system designed to cut delivery times by predicting what buyers are going to buy before they buy it. So basically, they again learning your habits, and they're trying to guess your preferences. So basically, they're shipping the product in the general direction or even right to your door. So before you even press a buy on the website. So again, a lot of projects right now related related to the last mile delivery. So they somehow are related to the collecting the data and making some analysis with that. So yeah, that actually was like a really brief overview of the several challenges in the last mile delivery and the potential kind of guidelines, what you can do with that. And yeah, thanks, and we'll be glad to answer all of your questions afterwards.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen, for your three informative talks and presentations. I'd like to open the floor to everybody listening and ask if you have any questions. I will unmute you all. Just give me 2 seconds. Okay, for those of you, you're now enabled, you should be able to unmute yourselves and ask any questions. So maybe I'll jump in with a question, an open question to the three panelists. So obviously we're living in unprecedented times with the first modern global pandemic with the COVID-19. So what do you think will change with regards to logistics after the pandemic versus what's changing during the pandemic? Do you think there'll be any permanent impact or change to the way logistics is handled or the way logistics takes place?
Well, let me be the first who answers. Well, I remember I read an article from the author of Sapiens book. That's one of the popular books last year. His surname is Harari, and he said there is nothing temporary which is supposed to be forever here. So I think yes, answer is definitely yes, since we see the operational efficiency move. That's also a big move in the logistics that will continue, I think, forever. So everything where logistics can automate and put less costs, because you clearly see that through all those three presentations we mentioned the costs and operational efficiency. So logistics is currently focusing on that, and it will be continuing forever. So that's for sure. Other than the impact, I think logistics will reimagine how it's done, its transportations over the borders between the countries, because probably borders will be closed for a longer period of time for traveling. And that actually will, maybe we'll see some bankruptcies in there, but I would expect new emerging companies appear who will do it in a more crowdsourcing way. Let's call it like that. So I already saw a few of the customers who came to us and said, well, we're building a kind of a marketplace for transportation. We need some IT stuff in there. I haven't seen any implementations in the production, but still since people are asking for that, I think we have to expect it within the next few years.
Okay, thank you. Joseph, Vitaly, have you anything to add?
Well, actually, I can add, like from my experience, again, working with the logistic companies and actually what I think right now. So I think that like COVID situation is like affecting the companies and the logistic companies, but that's also the reason why the companies are looking how to be the more efficient. So let's say those projects and those ideas that they will like always postpone, let's say if you want to be like more efficient, let's optimize this. The companies usually say, well, it's probably let's do it tomorrow, next week, next year, right? But nowadays they're seeing that there is like no time to do this tomorrow. So they need to do this right now. So that's actually, I think that's a really positive sign that the companies will be concentrated, like it's not only logistic companies, but most of the companies will be thinking how to be like more efficient. The second one, that's about the scalability. And again, from my experience, and let's say RMX as an example. So the RMX is like the company that's like a fleetless, right? And they do have the spikes, well, the spike that they anticipate during the, well, if like most of the companies in the US and the Europe, they have the spikes during the Christmas period, right? So for the companies from the Middle East, the spike is during the Ramadan period, right? So they like have a huge spike in the deliveries. So those spikes, they are anticipated and they're like really prepared for them. So they know how many new people they need to contract, how many people they need to hire, so how many contracts they need to sign with like outsourcing vendors. But this is something that in current situation, so no one couldn't predict that will happen, right? And some of the companies who are like more efficient, so they can scale like in much faster way than others. And that's actually, we will see those who survive and those who increase their like a market share in their business. So it means that those companies were like really efficient and paid a lot of attention to anticipate such kind of situations. So in other way, they were prepared.
Thanks, Vitaly.
Maybe one point to be added from my side, or from the ones I also mentioned, I think that there will be growth in e-commerce, of course. There will also be, some people who bought now online might go in the store afterwards again. So I don't think it's a complete change, but it will be a faster growth, as I said, a fast forward. And I also think there's a lot of also smaller retailers who just can't afford not to have a working online presence. I mean, if you walk through Zurich since 3 weeks, there's just nothing happening in any of these stores, right? And the main reason is, I mean, they could still sell, but they have no clue whatsoever, and they're just not prepared. And they hope now that the state in Switzerland at least will pay them the 1 month or 2 month somehow, right, so that they can survive. But if there's a second wave coming in October or November, they're just definitely dead if they haven't solved it. So I think there is a big change that the accessibility to e-commerce, especially also for the older generation, will have to come over the next couple of months, and it will also stay. Because many of them will just not feel comfortable going in a store until they really know it's over. And that might take, 9 months, 12 months. We don't know exactly, right? So it's probably taking longer. And that obviously has a big impact on logistics because there's a lot of last mile services that's needed. And there will be quite some major changes happening. And the question is, how can you easily scale that and be ready to do that?
Okay, thank you. I have a follow-up question. Social distancing is becoming the new norm in our current pandemic situation. As a result, there can be an effect on how we deliver products to end clients. And also there's the knock-on effect when drivers become incapacitated due to the virus or due to their own need for self-isolating for a period of time. What do you think the approach now would be to increasing or fast-tracking the use of drones or other automated delivery devices, especially in situations like this or just in general?
Maybe let me start again. From my perspective, that's actually a challenging question. I think for drones adoption without any driver who actually drives that drone, and drone should be automatically guided by itself, I think we're still missing some legal regulations, and people's mind are not prepared to that yet. Especially when we see lots of movies on the YouTube where those drones are actually hitting some buildings, people, and wires. So I think it's a still long way to go. Maybe we better expect something like Uber style of businesses. So instead of just a simple drivers and delivery trucks, we can expect just regular people to execute the same kind of activities, and the same as Uber. So be a parcel delivery guy for a month, and you can easily subcontract. I was still looking that way.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I would add here that when I was like reading the news about the Amazon, I found several of them that, like, especially the couriers are complaining that they don't want to put them into the dangers of having this this virus in their blood. And some of the actually couriers already had the coronavirus. And well, it was like funny because yesterday I ordered the package to like door to door, and the courier asked me, well, forced me actually to sign the package, right? So actually when I came home, I just washed my hands like this 3 times because I was like, well, I still like kind of skeptical, but like it's better to be safe. And I was like really feel very uncomfortable taking into my hands this kind of pencil, right? And yeah, so anyway, I do believe that the companies are doing a lot of measures how to work in the way when you have this like a social distancing. So instead of even like providing the signature, so they like some companies already come up with other solution. When talking about the drones, I like actually robots, all of that, like automation. Regarding the drones, personally, I'm a little bit skeptical in case how they might be applied for the logistic, especially in countries like Ukraine. And I'll explain you why. Because in the US, let's say you have a lot of the population who lives in the like rural areas that having their personal yards, live in their houses, right? But in the Ukraine, and let's say like in downtowns in the New York, so most of the people lives in the skyscrapers, right? So that's the question, how you want to deliver these packages with the drones to them. And well, there are like some ideas that you can deliver this like to the basement, etc. But still, it's like not completely solved, to my opinion. So I do believe that in the future, because some similar situation might appear again, that was forced somehow to have this like I would say semi-automatic delivery process, like in contrast to the, let's say, drone delivery. So I would basically think that there will be more popular deliveries like we currently have even with Amazon, so they can put the package on the trunk of your car, right? So that's like still works in the case of self-isolation, right? You are not interfering with the courier directly. So yeah.
I would also argue that especially for food and some other categories, there might be more pickup solutions. So you might not be allowed to enter a store. We didn't have that situation yet for food, but at least we had queues because of social distancing and all the stuff. I think that might come that we have more pickup solutions. Obviously, we would need smarter things than just putting metal boxes outside, but I think there will things be coming up.
Okay, thank you. We have a question from our audience, from Santa. I'm just going to, oh, she appears.
Thank you. So thank you all of you for the presentations. They were very interesting. And as somebody who's been working in the omni-channel retail strategy, all that you say seems to really fit in very well with the kind of work that we're doing. I had a particular question for Vitaly, especially regarding the last mile delivery. So you showed us a rather staggering figure where 53% of the logistics cost actually is in the last mile delivery. So my question is, how is it that is one of the solutions today kind of consolidating the items that are ordered online higher up in the supply chain so that it reduces the last mile deliveries? Because today more and more retailers are using either brick and mortar stores and a warehouse to fulfill an order. So they're using multiple sources to fulfill one order, which makes like 2 last mile shipping or 3 last mile shipping deliveries. So consolidating it upstream, is it a good strategy to reduce the costs and the inefficiencies in the system?
Well, I will give you an example. So that's the question would be like, the answer, like the simple answer would be like, it depends. And here's like the question why. So I often use, and actually still like, again, the customer like this Aramex, so they do provide the freight forwards, right? So basically you can deliver all of the items from the Amazon or from the eBay, those who does not directly ships to the Ukraine. And all of those companies, they do provide this kind of consolidated shipments just to reduce the cost of the like traveling cost between the warehouses and actually the last mile delivery. But there is like there will be like another cost association with that. So if you, let's say, store too many items, right? So you infer like you incur the extra cost for storing, for extra capacity for storing all of that. Then, right. Sorry?
Right, so it's a trade-off between
Yeah.
the cost of keeping the inventory versus, I mean, sending it to the customer.
Yeah, so imagine the situation. So you order the refrigerator, let's say TV, and the third item that you're ordering is like mobile phone, right? So actually, if you will consolidate all of the 3 shipments, right? So you are like still occupying the space, like also expensive space of your warehouse, just to wait for the third package. So which is like, clearly it's not very efficient, so right? You can like cut the cost during the delivery time. Well, not the delivery time, during the delivery cost, but still you will have the higher cost of for storing all of the items.
Right. Okay, so you're saying that this is not something retailers are really looking into to improve their last mile delivery costs?
I would say that they provide this option to the customer, especially for reducing cost for them to the last delivery. And actually, like recently, I ordered followed the similar strategy as Anatoliy, and ordered like one particular Wi-Fi router, which I was not able to find in Ukraine, so I ordered it in the Amazon, and I used this like a freight forwarder. And actually, there was like an option that for me, if I want to consolidate all of the shipments, so I said, well, that's fine, but thanks, that's only one that they have. So okay. Yeah, so most of the companies are offering that.
All right, thank you.
Actually, I have an interesting comment on that. I was researching what Chinese retail stores did before coronavirus, and they actually were quite innovative in the way how they do a last mile delivery or delivery at all. So first, they actually switch it into delivery for 20 minutes or 30 minutes within that time frame. And they realized that if they decrease the time frame for that small amount, they experienced a 5-time increase in that online delivery. So people, instead of going to the shop, they went to the shop 1 or 2 times, but then they realized that they can get the same order or the same basket every time, and they can order it online and get delivered from 20 minutes. So Chinese retail stores, they actually moved not in the consolidations in delivery, but they moved in the delivery from multiple warehouses. If they have a network of grocery stores, they pick fresh food from one, toilet paper from another, and they do it along the way. So they consolidate, but not in the single place. They rather do it along the way.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Samta. Do we have any more questions from the audience?
I have another one if no one's presenting.
Absolutely.
Welcome.
Okay, so this question is actually for Dr. Joseph. So you showed us the video of how pick and ship works, and one of the things was that you store the packages, but in the containers according to zones. Do you also consider the delivery promise? So in terms of the preparation time needed and the delivery time needed, and that's kind of computed so that the whole shelf has to be ready in a certain amount of time, especially for express delivery, and so is sorted according to the time of preparation promised to the customer.
Yes, that basically depends on the route scheduling that you have, right? So and that's basically the choice of the software then to decide if that parcel is basically kept in a trolley until 5 other parcels arrive and go together on the route, or whether that trolley goes out because there is a promise to be fulfilled and there's a routing waiting, right? So that's basically flexible and depends not so much on the system, but more on the IT system driving it.
Right, but is it taken into consideration? I mean, I know you showed us how it was classified by zone, but do you also classify by the urgency of the delivery?
You can do that, of course, right?
Okay.
I mean, that's actually the beauty. You could pick out express deliveries, even if you have zone 2, and for example, the customer changes the delivery time and wants it earlier, you might just pick that one parcel out and send it, for example, via express if you want to, right? It just depends if you have a truck going there. I mean, the situation that you saw is basically a large retailer. They basically have their orders, and every evening or every morning, whenever they have their routes full, they basically have a truck going to the big consumption centers, right? And that was a bit that example. And if you have kind of speed, that could also happen then on a lower level because it could be pre-sorted and could faster go onto the final delivery compared to the traditional system where you would have 2 sorting steps in between. So where you completely unload in a sorting center, maybe it has to go overnight and things like that. Yeah? So you're more flexible and could be much more faster.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, I have a final question, again to the panel at large. So taking into account the high demand for deliveries, especially at this time, what do you think should be the right approach or the best approach to meet and the SLA and still deliver on time?
I mean, if I may answer for food, for example, what I'm wondering is, I mean, we have store hours, right? So why would you just not, after closure of the store, do in-store picking and just deliver in the evening, in the morning? I think there's actually a lot of capacity that you could use. Still, the question is if the supply chain could basically handle the additional volume, because I think that's what we're seeing is that all, the supply chains are all optimized to run into expected patterns. But, bigger changes, it's actually, I think, and that's what we observe, is really hard to handle. But that's where I would see the fastest capacity. Just use the stores that we have and just deliver from the stores. And much more regional than, for example, doing it offshore or far away from Hamburg to Zurich, right?
Right, okay, thank you.
I think there is no single answer. I think smart companies will do it in multiple ways. They will look at the data and understand, okay, we can get 5% of efficiency if we, for example, will not sell that item, right? Because we have always problems with that. But as opposite, we will propose to use those items, for example. That's a simple. Another simple is we can get 5% increase by hiring more people, just because of there is a wave of unemployment. Well, we can, I think, find a nice talents on the market. And third one, we can get 10% of the increase if we find a smart way of collaborations between each other. So if there is maybe a retail consortium or some kind of logistic consortium or some local clusters, like we have IT cluster, for example, in Ukraine, they all can collaborate, and in the tough times, even if they are competitors, they can actually find a win-win situation. So I think the smart companies will execute multiple strategies.
Okay. Vitaly, would you like to add anything? You're on mute.
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. Yeah. So I have a simple answer for that. So just simply follow the Amazon's approach and hire extra 100,000 people. But like, if seriously, I mean, like, so I would say first do better planning, right? So I mean, like predictions, because the patterns, as Joseph mentioned, so they will be like roughly the same, but actually there will be like increase in demand. But you can handle these demands as you usually handle during the Christmas period or during the Ramadan or during any other. So that's actually about like the availability of people, like the extra, I would say, remote work, well, not remote workers, but contractor workers who can help you with that. So like better planning and more people.
Very good, very good. Right, okay, that brings us to the end of our presentations this evening. So thank you all for attending and asking your questions. You will all be sent copies of this evening's presentations, so you can have a look at them offline, and then feel free to reach out to the presenters with any further questions. I would like to say as well that should you have any challenges in logistics or created by the current COVID-19 situation, please reach out to us at ELEKS. You'll find us at eleks.com, and we'll be more than pleased to help you with your challenges and your needs. So I'll bring this to a close just now. Thank you all for joining and for listening and your kind attention. And I'll thank you again.
Very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
very
your time.
Thank you.
And have a good day.